G. Gordon Liddy.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a real treat for all of you dog lovers and owners. Her name is Maria Goodavage, if that is correct. Is that correct?
That's pretty good.
Pretty good. Okay. Because it's French, I would have pronounced it Goodavage. But
I like that better.
Okay. But she's a news editor and featured writer at Say Media's Dogster.com. She's been a reporter for USA Today and the San Francisco Chronicle. She's founding editor of the Dog Lover's Companion National Guidebook Series and author of the Dog Lover's Companion to California and the Dog Lover's Companion to San Francisco Bay Area. And she and her husband and dog and daughter live in San Francisco. And she's authored a book called Soldier Dogs, The Untold Story of America's Canine Heroes. And it's really interesting because, you not only just tell the stories of individual dogs who have performed very well in combat situations and so on, but you talk about which breeds are better for what tasks, the training they go through, and all the rest. It's just absolutely fascinating.
Thank you so much.
Now, I had noticed when I was going through airports in Europe and what have you, the frequency of the dogs that would be used were Belgian Malinois. What is it about the Belgian Malinois that makes them so attractive for this kind of work?
Right. It's interesting that you noticed that because we don't really use them that much with the TSC in the U.S. It's becoming a little more common, but you'll still see a lot of beagles around. But the Belgian Malinois is the dog that apparently the Navy SEAL Team 6 took with them on the raid on the Bin Laden compound last May. And the Belgian Malinois is a very resilient, very hardy dog, doesn't have the same problems, for instance, with hips and bones and other problems as the German Shepherd, which is so commonly known as the typical military working dog. Belgian Malinois are now really rising in the ranks of military working dogs because they're a little lighter oftentimes. So if you have to carry your dog for any reason, and that does happen in wartime, it's going to be a little easier to carry your dog as well. And they just keep on working. In fact, it's something that the handlers have to be very aware of, that these Belgian Malinois will work and work and work till they drop. And that is a real problem in Afghanistan where there's heat to contend with in the summer as well. So they have to really know their dog and keep an eye on them because they are dedicated to the mission.
When they first get the dog, they have what they call the ball test. Your book talks about that. And
yeah, it's really interesting, Gordon, because you think, okay, a war dog, you have to test for ferocity or maybe the ability to sniff out a bomb, but they don't necessarily need the aggression skills. There are all kinds of jobs for dogs in the military, and being able to test a dog's nose at that stage is a little bit young. They haven't been trained, so what they do is they test for the ability, the desire for a dog to have a ball. Now, a lot of dogs just love a ball, a tennis ball, a Kong, and that is all important in the world of military working dogs because that's their paycheck. That and handler praise, and they live for those two things. So a ball in the mouth is the reward, and if they're not willing to work hard enough for it, if they don't pretty much obsess over finding a ball, that the DoD buyers, the military working dog buyers, are watching for that obsession, they're probably not going to have what it takes to make it as a military working dog today. They have to be willing to pretty much do anything to get that ball. Some dogs desire it more than others, and those who don't, they're probably you're not going to see them in Afghanistan.
Yeah. Now when okay, they buy the dog, and then they go to, where did they go, to Lackland Air Force Base?
Right. The majority of the dogs will, the ones that the DoD buys, will go to to Lackland Air Force Base, where they'll be trained for several months. They're about 2 years old when they're purchased, so they have some very intensive training. Some dogs will just be used as the IED detector dogs, the sniffer dogs, but most of them these days do dual dual training so that they will also have patrol skills where they can attack, defend, just take out the bad guy. And so that training lasts a little bit longer. There are other programs in the military as well. They're handled by contractors. For instance, the IDD program through the Marines. Those are mostly Labrador retrievers, and they're not going to be the attack dogs. And there are a good number of them out there as well.
That's because, according to your book, they say that the Labrador retrievers are too goofy.
Well, I have one lying under my desk at my home office as we speak. So, and I'm looking at him, and yeah, they can be pretty goofy. They can be very serious and on task, but they aren't meant for some missions. Like, they're great at sniffing out bombs, and they will keep on task because they know that the reward comes when they get that. But when tracking, they're not quite as well used as they had been because they want a dog who's a little more serious about the work. It's pretty funny because every lab pretty much smiles and they give that happy countenance, and they're great companions over there, and incomparable in many respects. But yeah, they say they're a little goofy for some jobs.
Yeah, well, I believe that my eldest daughter has two yellow labs, and they're nuts. They're absolutely nuts.
And they stay puppies till they're about 8 or 9.
That's right. That's right. Now, the best dog I ever saw or ever had was a mixed breed. It was half Rottweiler, half Black Lab, and I used to call it my aquatic attack dog. I mean, it had webbed feet. And it had that inner coat, that they get. So that in February, I live on the bank of the Potomac River. In February, go right out into the water, and you wouldn't even know it was cold or was there. Yeah. They wouldn't feel anything. And all she wanted was not the ball, but the stick.
Ah, right.
She had a stick, and I'd break my arm. The dog would have me throwing that stick out into the river.
Sounds like a good life. Crazy. And your dog could have been a good military dog because they do use mixed breeds as well. They will, the breeders will breed dogs together sometimes if they want, let's say, a Belgian Malinois who might be a little less nervy because they can be kind of high-strung sometimes. They may breed them with, a little bit more German Shepherd, or they may even put a little pit bull in there. Not that pit bulls are always the most mellow dogs, but they will throw other breeds into there, and they can come up with some very interesting concoctions that are really on the border of Belgian Malinois and fill in the blank. So your dog could have been one of those. Sounds pretty.
Well, that dog was over at my daughter's, and I guess this was the Rottweiler part. Someone broke into their backyard and came up to the plate glass door, to the back, and that dog went through the plate glass and chased him. The guy tried to get back over the fence, but the dog got him by the butt. And that was the end of him.
Wow, that's amazing. That dog definitely probably would have been a contender if they'd shopped for him at the DOD.
Now, let's talk about, there are all these different tasks that you describe in your book, Soldier Dogs. I guess they specialize, don't they?
Yeah, they do. At first, they just get the dogs and they test them. They do the general testing, and then depending on the need, really, in various units, they'll train them up for various jobs, and depending on, of course, the breed. But you won't have a dog, for instance, who's both a narcotics detector dog and an explosives detector dog, because you can imagine the confusion if the dog alerts to one and it's really the other. So they never, once they train on one scent, they stay with that. And the majority of dogs today in the military are used indeed for tracking, for sniffing out IEDs, because, as you know, IEDs are the most common killer in Afghanistan right now, and the dog's nose is often all that separates the troops from getting killed by these things. So it's super important that they have a lot of these sniffer dogs in there, and if they have the patrol skills, then all the better for some. There are mine detector dogs. There are dogs that they are combat tracker dogs, and you've got the dogs that sniff out the bombs themselves, but then you have the dogs who actually they sniff out the people who plant the bombs. So they're going to be tracking someone, and they can track pretty old trails, and it's amazing, as you know, probably from seeing them on TV sometimes, what some of these sniffer tracker dogs can do. And the Cairo, the Belgian Malinois, who was involved in the Navy SEALs raid of the Osama bin Laden compound last year, was what they call a multi-purpose canine, and he was probably trained by contractors. And they have jobs even beyond what they're trained to do at Lackland Air Force Base. They may jump out of planes in parachutes. They may be attached to their handler and rappel or fast rope out of helicopters and do several different things that some of those standard military dogs don't do. But that's the minority. The majority are leading troops through these IED-infested fields and saving lives.
Yeah, my eldest son is now retired as a commander in the Navy SEALs for 20 years. I have no idea whether he ever worked with a dog or not because he won't tell me anything about it.
So you can understand my difficulty in getting information on the Belgian Malinois.
I'm surprised that how you were able to do that.
No, I didn't. I don't have that much more knowledge about that Belgian than other people do. And you know what? None of it's been really confirmed by the Navy SEALs. So it's all conjecture with a little bit of slight head nodding, I think.
All right. Well, Ms. Goodavage, we need to take a little pause for the benefit of our advertisers for a few moments. Can you stand by?
I will be happy to.
All right. Folks, I'm talking to Maria Goodavage, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly.
I like that. Yep.
And her book is called Soldier Dogs, The Untold Story of America's Canine Heroes, and there's a photograph on the dust jacket of a dog wearing goggles. And I've got to ask you about that right after these words. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm in mid-conversation with Maria Goodavage. She is the author of Soldier Dogs, The Untold Story of America's Canine Heroes. And it's absolutely fascinating. There are stories of individual dogs that have done, wonderful things in here and everything. I don't want to spoil the book for you by disclosing all those details, but there's so much terrific information about how they train them and so forth that I find it just fascinating. Tell me about this cover photograph, Ms. Goodavage.
Yeah, this is the only, actually, we have 16 pages of color photos in the book, and this is the only one, and they all pertain to the dogs and the handlers in the book itself. This is the only one that isn't directly related to one of the stories. It's an Air Force photo of a beautiful, it's probably just a sniffer dog because it's not a Belgian Malinois or German Shepherd, and it's a kind of a Lab Vizsla sort of mix with doggles on. They're goggles for dogs, and the brand name that they generally use they're called doggles, and they're absolutely adorable. They just and the dog is staring out at the viewer per se, just at us through these doggles. And this is a dog. This is the kind of thing I was really striving to find, and I didn't see a lot of dogs wearing doggles during my research, but I did encounter one when I was at Yuma, Arizona, at the Yuma Proving Ground. And I came across a dog who was wearing them, and that drew me to her. And I'm not going to give anything away here on the interview, but it was the doggles that drew me to her, and I got an absolutely incredible story that actually takes readers throughout the book because of her and her doggles. And she is one brave, amazing canine hero.
Yeah, now, that's something else I wanted to bring up. You use male and female dogs. Is there an advantage to a female? Are they more empathetic? Are they closer to their handlers? Or,
I've heard a few different things. The two advantages that I've heard are not quite so much in the realm of the emotional, because I think from what I've seen and heard, handlers get just as attached, and the dogs are just as empathetic if they're male or female. But they're lighter, generally speaking, so if they do have to haul them over walls, or if the dog is injured, they're easier to carry, and they're not as prone to they don't do leg lifts, so they don't stop as often and have to water the sand, as it were. And generally, on a mission, a good male dog is not going to be doing those leg lifts all over the place anyway. But those are the two. But in general, these dogs in general are extremely well-tuned to their people, in this case to the handlers. And when they're deployed, they're together often 24/7. They eat together. They sleep in the same room, in the same tent in the same sleeping bag sometimes if it's cold. I even have an anecdote in the book about a handler and his dog Lex, a Marine handler and his dog Lex, who shared foxholes together during their month-long mission in Afghanistan, supporting some troops. And he would wake up, it was the rainy season, and he was lying in his foxhole with the dog. He made the dog get in the foxhole, cover it up with a tarp, and he'd wake up a couple of hours later because inevitably rain would be coming into the foxhole. The dog wasn't there. The first time this happened, it was very alarming. But he peeked out of the tarp, and the dog, a beautiful Belgian Malinois, was standing there, not sitting, in guard position with his ears, his triangular ears just forward and just absolutely riveted on any noise, anything. He was there protecting his man, and he was so touched by this, but he got him back in the foxhole because he wanted to protect him and keep him warm and dry. Got up again, dog will be outside. This happened every night for a month, sure. and the dog just felt such a need to protect his Marine, and it went the other way around too, where the Marine, once there was some gunfire, surprise fire on them from the Taliban, and he just instinctively threw the dog into the foxhole and covered the dog with his body. You know, he was wearing flak and Kevlar, so he was a little more protected. But it goes both ways, and this bond, I hear from a lot of handlers, is deeper than their friendships with humans, and at war, they even feel closer sometimes to their dog than they do with a spouse, at least temporarily. They're just so bonded, and their lives depend on each other, and everyone's lives depend on that dog's nose. So it's good that they have this close bond.
Well, that's something. Is there any, I noticed you have a photograph in there of a handler and a Doberman Pinscher. Are they particularly well suited for some particular task?
That was from World War II, actually, and we have just a couple. We go into I go into history in this book, but the focus is on today. But I mentioned this. There was a story that goes behind this photo that was actually from a Vietnam handler, that he was so touched by this photo. He saw so much in this photo, and it remains his favorite photograph of this very young Marine during a battle in the Pacific, hiding in what appears to be a trench with his dog. And there's just, you can see that bond. His arm is around him. It's an old black and white photo. He's got his rifle at his side, and they're just together. The Doberman Pinschers are really not used very frequently anymore. It's really gone in favor of the Malinois and the Shepherds and the Labs. They are occasionally there, but these are the dogs of today's wars.
I saw that photograph. That was the Battle of Peleliu.
Right.
24 hours after it was assaulted by the Marines, 6 out of every one of those men was dead.
Yeah, horrors.
It was really
shouldn't
bad.
have happened. That was just incredible. And you know, that was actually, Mr. Liddy, the first use of dogs officially by the U.S. was World War II. Which was surprising because dogs have been, they've been in the military. They've been on each side of the Civil War, and everything was sort of unofficial. Even in World War I, right above the picture you were just talking about is a picture of a dog named Sergeant Stubby, and he was a World War I hero. He was a pit bull, little pit bull guy whose owner.
Ms. Goodavage, unfortunately, we've run out of time. I could talk to you for 2 hours more easily.
Well,
I've just enough time to thank you for writing this book.
Thank you so much.
It needs to be, folks, it's a wonderful book. Soldier Dogs, The Untold Story of America's Canine Heroes. You really need to get this in this. If you've got a dog, you buy this as a present for yourself. Soldier Dogs by Maria Goodavage.